Well, good afternoon and welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, Editor-in-Chief of thenationalpulse.com. And it's Monday, November the 30th, the year of our Lord 2020. We're broadcasting live here on Real America's Voice from the downtown Washington, D.C. studios. And I give a great big thank you to the audience out there who pesters me all weekend and says, can't you do 7 days a week? Yes, I could. And then I'd be dead by 35. I want to start the show off today with some bad news, some sad news, in fact. Somebody who has become a staple to this show, Molly McCann, of counsel with Sidney Powell, will no longer be able to join us on the show. Molly, I want to bring you in to talk to us about that and give us the final update from what you're seeing from around the country. Molly.
Well, Raheem, we're getting a lot of negative headlines that I think people should keep in perspective. It's never good when a state certifies, but it's certainly not the end of the world. So today we heard that Arizona has certified its vote, but that was expected to happen today. As I think everyone knows, there are members of the Arizona legislature right now who are conducting a hearing to hear the evidence of fraud. And Kelly Ward, who is the chairwoman of the GOP down in Arizona, had already filed with the court her intention to file a suit as soon as certification had completed, which I think must be required by their civil procedure law down there, I assume. So we should expect a lawsuit from Kelly Ward soon. We knew this would happen, absent something massive. So Trump supporters shouldn't get too down on that development in Arizona. Similarly, in Wisconsin, over the weekend, the recounts concluded. On all the headlines, we're talking about how Trump didn't win the recount. Well, we didn't expect Trump to win the recount. As he said himself, the purpose of the recount was to determine which votes were illegally cast, and now they will challenge that in court. So we still have a lot of positive forward momentum in the Trump movement right now, and the mainstream media is just spinning it the way they always will, but nothing's the end of the world yet.
Yeah, and I just want to remind the audience that as soon as the hearings restart, we'll be taking the live video feed for you. They're in lunch at the moment, due to return any moment. So you just have to suffer along with me and Molly for the time being while we wait for this wait for this hearing. So Molly, walk us through the states you're looking at right now. Anything that we should be looking for over the next day or so?
Well, on the Amistad Project, which is a branch or an initiative of the Thomas More Society, they've started to file their suits. And I think people should keep really close watch on that. They filed in Wisconsin, they have filed in Georgia, and they're bringing both statistical claims. They have Matt Braynard on their team, and anyone who's familiar with War Room watching that, they've seen him quite a bit. He's quite an impressive statistician. He crowdfunded quite a bit of money to run his analyses, and so he's sort of backing up their statistical analysis, and then of course they're bringing legal challenges to the legality of the vote. I think those suits are really heavy hitters, and the only question is how quickly will they move through the court. But as you probably also know, the FBI approached Brainard and asked him for all of his data on this illegal activity. I don't have a lot of faith in the FBI. I know it has some wonderful people in it, but I think sort of the upper echelons, I'm a little jaded from the Flynn case, but the upper echelons maybe are not really.
Yeah. No, they want
there's some corruption.
Molly, they want the data so they can delete it. Right? They don't want the data so that they can investigate. Give us your data, we'll take care of it. That's the FBI today. Okay, look, Molly, I want to make sure we've got about 3 minutes left in this segment here. We've got the hearings coming back in just a moment. You're going to have to step away from politics for a little while, just as people were getting used to, what do they call you? What was the best name you got called on here? The goth girl that we have on? Tell us why. Why do we lose you?
I thought the lighting was bad that day, and whoever said that, I don't blame them. The lighting was bad. Why am I stepping away?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm stepping away because I've taken I've been hired. I was hired several years ago, actually, to clerk for a federal judge. So I'll be working for her for the next 9 months. I waived 3 months to finish the Flynn case, but I'm really looking forward to taking this opportunity to become a better attorney.
Well, we're incredibly grateful that you did wait around to work on the Flynn case. You just did magnificent work on that with Sidney Powell as well. Molly, just before we let you go here, obviously you'll be back at some point. We don't know. You might enjoy yourself so much that you'll stay on longer. We wish you the best here. But just remind people when you are back, where they'll be able to follow you, get your emails, your updates.
Well, if you all haven't destroyed Twitter by then, I will still be on Twitter at Moll McCann, and my website will still be at www.mollymccann.com.
We won't have destroyed Twitter by then, but we'll have made sure that you get suspended. Molly McCann, thank you so much, really, for everything that you've been joining us for the last couple of weeks, bringing us the daily updates. We really appreciate it, and thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, my attitude towards this as we await the resumption of the hearing there in Arizona, my attitude towards all of this now is, actually, who cares about the deadlines? Who cares about the safe harbor deadlines? Who cares about the electors deadlines? Who even cares about the inauguration deadline? If the left is going to throw the rule book out the window, throw the Constitution out the window, why do we insist on playing by, we'll stick to the rules and we'll just allow them to cheat? No. As far as I'm concerned now, there are no deadlines. It doesn't matter. You get past that date, we'll set another date. You get past that date, we'll set another date. No, forget it all. Here's what's going to happen. We are going to keep investigating, and you see the people down at the bottom of the screen right here. Keep investigating, keep the hearings going, keep all the information, all of the data, all of the statistics, all of the evidence, and there will be more and more. So whether we get to December the 8th, whether we get to the 14th, whether we get to the 20th of January and beyond that, no, we're going to throw the rule book out the window as well. We are going to continue. By the way, one of the things that takes time and that is going to happen, people are going to be knocking on doors saying, hey, are you this person? Did you vote from this residence? Oh, you're not. And think about how much that's going to throw up in terms of evidence. But it takes time. Stick around. We'll be back in just a moment with more from the hearings. Welcome back to the National Pulse. We are awaiting the resumption of the hearings in Arizona. You can see it right about here, somewhere around here, right here. Okay. Keep a watch on that screen. We'll be bringing it to you live as soon as it resumes. I've been watching it this afternoon. I'm sure many of you have as well. There is a lot of substantial information, and you'll remember, whether it was on this program with Bill McKinley and Nigel Farage and the whole team that came on, Phil Klein. You know, Molly in the last segment mentioned Phil Klein and the Amistad Project. Regular viewers of this show will remember that we were one of the first to have Phil Klein on. We may have even been the first to break the news of what was going on with CTCL, the Zuckerberg-funded group, where all that money was going, what apportionments were being made between Democrat and Republican areas, majority voting areas. And there's more suits going on right now from Phil Klein and the Amistad Project. There's also an awful lot that's going on over at thenationalpulse.com as we continue to dive into the details that the left and these tech companies, these voting tech companies, they don't expect us to. They think we're too lazy. They don't realize that there are actual journalists on the right and actual reporters on the right who will go through this information and pick their claims apart. And so as we wait for the hearing to begin, I wanted to take you through some of the stories that we have over at thenationalpulse.com that remain highly relevant to this whole situation, beginning with our lead story today, which is Smartmatic claims, and has claimed since the election on its website, that it prohibits political donations from its staff. But guess what? Natalie Winters went away and found out whether that was true or not. And we actually found dozens of donations from Smartmatic staff on the FEC website, where election filings are kept, campaign contribution documents, receipts are kept. So you can see on the story here, the Smartmatic website, they put up a fact check section of their own website, and that section clearly states, quote, Smartmatic's founders and employees adhere to strict ethics codes that, among other things, prohibits them from making political donations. Except in just 1 year, over the course of 2019-2020, we found 28 donations from Smartmatic employees, political donations, and 24 of them, that's nearly 85%, went to Democrat candidates via Act Blue. You'll remember Act Blue, that's a Democrat fundraising platform that the Black Lives Matter website was directing people to. Act Blue also happens to be the largest bundling operation for Joe Biden. I want to take you now to some of the stories we were covering over the weekend. Also, not least, about somebody you may have heard of on social media in the last couple of weeks, Lord Mark Malloch Brown. Now, Lord Malloch Brown was actually a bigwig in Britain's Labour Party. He was an assistant advisor to a Prime Minister we'd all rather like to forget. In fact, probably have in a lot of senses. That's Gordon Brown. Do you remember Gordon Brown? Dull, horrible socialist, was Tony Blair's Chancellor for a very long time, took over as Prime Minister when Tony Blair got bored of it and wanted to go to China and make more money over there. So Lord Malloch Brown, interestingly, shares an intricate friendship as well as a financial relationship with none other than George Soros. Lord Malloch Brown also happens now to be the chairman of Smartmatic. And it was in 2010, I believe, that he went on television in the Philippines and was forced to admit that actually, despite, again, these companies making their claims on their websites, their fact-check claims on their websites, no, we're competitors, we don't work together, don't link us together, that's conspiracy theory, you're a conspiracy theorist. Let me read you what Lord Malloch Brown said back in 2010. Remember, the National Pulse, we were the first to report that actually the two companies had a non-compete agreement between them. And that was from court filings that we found. Let's go through what Lord Malloch Brown said this time. He said, look, I think that competitors who say that, the fact is, yes, part of our technology is licensed from Dominion. We have a license for the international use of that particular piece of the technology that we employ. And the devil will be in these details, ladies and gentlemen. I understand that to a lot of people are like, yeah, well, so what does it matter? Well, it matters for one, because you don't lie about something like that if there's not something to cover up. Why would you lie about that? That's like you asking me what color tie am I wearing today, and I say it's pink. Can't you see it's pink? When we can all see if you just look. So what are they trying to not make us look for? Take their word at. There's more of all of this to come. I want to now flip to something that's really riling up the anti-Brexit left, especially amongst the journalistic classes in the United Kingdom. It was a long-form piece that I did this weekend about a pseudo-reporter called Carol Cadwallader. Carol Cadwallader is very upset that I wrote this. Her friends are very upset that I wrote this. And I just think it had to be written. And look, the article's called After Years of Lies, Brexit Conspiracy Theorist Carol Cadwallader's Grift Unravels. And it effectively boils down to this. You can see on the Pulse site, in fact, can we raise that up a little bit to the top of the website? You can see on the Pulse website, I've really gone to town on how this is presented every single day. And I'll talk to you about aesthetics and the importance of them at another time, maybe in another show. But if we go down this piece, my opening line is this. What happens when an investigative reporter was lying all along? What happens to their editors? What happens to their newspaper? What's the reward for truth-telling in journalism if one is handed cash prizes and historic awards for peddling fake news? Well, Carole Cadwalladr was behind the great lie that was Britain's Russiagate, that Vladimir Putin marched 17.4 million Britons to the ballot box on June the 23rd, 2016, and said, you must vote for Brexit. Tricked the whole nation into doing it. And her story, is unraveling. The latest news out of the United Kingdom on her legal cases, that she's having to remove the truth of defense claim. That means she's a liar. Back with more from the hearings after this break. Welcome back to the National Pulse. We're covering in this hour as soon as they resume, which I'm told is about 30 seconds away, if you can deal with me for that much longer. The hearings in Arizona are due to resume. Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, the Trump legal team down there with their witnesses making the case, and cases, about why they believe so many thousands of ballots were stolen. We can go now back to the hearings.
Kind of the lineup of what we're doing. And then after Dr. Shiva, as if your minds are not numb enough yet from all of the statistical analysis, we'll have a presentation by Bobby Pinton. And then after that, we'll have a series of individuals who have firsthand knowledge of what has happened at the various polls, a number of poll workers, and then finally we're going to hopefully wrap things up before we need to do a hard stop at 5:30 because there are a number of people who have flights that are going to be outbound by 6 o'clock. So that's kind of the order of things. I do not intend for us to take a break this afternoon. We've had an extended lunch by about 10 minutes, so if you need to use the facilities, please do so without causing a disruption. Also, I'm asking once again, please either turn your phones off or silence them. So we're just waiting on Mr. Brainard. Thank you very much. Know if he's going to be here in just a moment. Mr. Brainard. Okay.
Well, we're waiting here on the next witness to present before the hearings in Arizona. We'll bring you that, as you can see in the box next to me. We'll bring you all the latest breaking news as it occurs. We'll bring you the hearings live as they occur, but a recap from this morning, from what we've heard this morning already. Now, I've been watching this, and I'm sure many of you have been as well. Incredibly compelling evidence and testimony. Remember, one of the things that we were asked to believe by the left media, by the CNNs, even some of the Fox News anchors over the course of the last 4 years, was that people like Michael Avenatti and his stripper friend were good character witnesses. Really important that we listen to them, especially about how Vladimir Putin was involved in the 2016 election. How many times we were told that these witnesses who were coming forward, who wouldn't give their names, who wouldn't swear and sign affidavits, whistleblowers from inside the Trump administration, apparently anonymous whistleblowers, who we now know were very, very junior staffers that never actually interacted with the president. We now know who they are. But the media presented them to us as unassailable character and fact witnesses. But today you've seen a Microsoft and NASA engineer swearing and signing affidavits. You've seen people who are just ordinary members of the public who answered the call that was made by a lot of people before the election to, hey, we need poll watchers. And what they saw when they got there was something they never thought that they would see. Nothing that they thought would happen in the United States of America, i.e. that people were being turned away perhaps because of their partisan registration, perhaps because they were registered Republicans. I think what we need to do when we listen to, and I think we have our witness taking the seat right now with a presentation that's about to start. I think what we need to do is not just listen to this testimony, not just be aghast at what we're hearing and take these people at face value because they are actually putting their names out there and signing affidavits. I think we need to each and every single one of us take the time out today to make sure that your friends who don't bother to seek this out on Real America's Voice or anywhere else on the internet, make sure that you send them a link, that they see it. And the more people that see this stuff and hear the truth about what happened here, then the better chances we have. I want to send you back now to Arizona and with the latest witness there, Matt Braynard.
So, are you ready for me to start?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Proceed. Thank you.
A couple days after the election, just a second. I and a team of dedicated individuals with experience similar to my own in the field of voter data and analysis decided to engage in an experiment of sorts to detect potentially illegal ballots without any preconceived notions about what we might find, what we want to find, just to try to determine the truth using a couple of different analytical methods. Fortunately, despite the great expense of this experiment, we were able to fundraise through crowdsourcing in a very short order. We've raised over $600,000 from almost 9,000 different donors all over the country who are interested in finding the truth. And we entered this with although many of us have political biases, personally, we brought none of those biases to our analysis. We just decided we wanted to try to find the truth using methods we believe to be reliable. Our findings were across the country. We found a tremendous number of anomalies, and Arizona is at the forefront of many of the anomalies we found. Now, unlike many other states that we evaluated, there were some unique limitations to our analysis in Arizona. In general, we were only able to get data for early and absentee voters in all of the 6 states we targeted. In Arizona, we were only able to get early and absentee voters for the county of Maricopa. So all of the numbers I'm sharing with you, all of the analysis, is based solely on Maricopa. Now, as the other counties make their data available, we'll certainly try to update these reports and these numbers. But just looking at Maricopa, we found some interesting results. So I'm going to open up a PowerPoint that kind of covers the country, but I'm really just going to speak about Arizona, which is, I know what you're interested in. So. Okay, so we ran 5 or 6 different experiments on each of these states. One experiment that we ran where we isolated a universe of voters according to the state who had been sent an absentee ballot but did not return that ballot. And we asked them 2 questions. One, we asked them by reaching out to them via phone, because we were operating 3 different call centers to try to reach these people to confirm whether or not they had ever requested that absentee ballot and whether or not they returned it. So in Arizona, we were able to reach 2,044 people who had been identified as having requested an absentee ballot and not returned it, according to the state. Of those, 44% of them said they never requested that ballot. Then, among the individuals who did say they did request it, we asked, well, did you send it back? And among those, of the overall universe, we had 354 of them say, yeah, I actually mailed it back, despite the state not recording having received it back. Now, I've got a little bit of audio-visual for you because our call centers were recording phone calls. Now, none of this is speculative. I know that some people have, other analysts in some of the court cases I've been involved in, have taken our numbers and then projected them. Say, for example, projecting that 44% of the did not request of our sample out to the entire universe of about 500,000 unreturned, saying these are the number of ballots that it seems or appears possible that somebody else requested those ballots other than the voter of record. But I'm not doing that myself. Others are welcome to make that analysis. I don't have a background as a statistician. But what I do have is I'd like to share with you some of the audio recordings of at least 2 of the individuals we spoke to who said that they did not get a ballot. They did not request the ballot despite being sent them. Now, these audio recordings have been modified to cut out like their last names because we don't want to inadvertently dox anybody here. But if somebody privately, as you are in positions of authority in the legislature, wants full recordings, we're more than happy to share that with you. More than happy to give you the names, addresses, phone numbers of everybody we've identified in these categories. Okay? So I'm going to play the one audio recording of an individual. Bear with me as I make some adjustments.
We recognize that technology is great until you actually need to have it work.
Yeah, but we can find a workaround if we need to. So I'm just going to hold the mic to the computer speaker.
Can't hear it.
Can we get it out of this speaker? Okay, we'll try it again. Okay.
Our teenagers when we need. It's like your volume's not turned up on the mic. Here we go. Turn that up.
Let's try it again.
Hello, this is Mary Kemper with Voter Integrity Fund. May I please speak to Charles?
This is, who are you with?
Voter Integrity Fund. Charles Mart's in the state of Arizona and is having requested an absentee ballot. Did you request an absentee ballot?
Absolutely did not.
No. Okay, and did you? Okay, no. Okay, somebody from our team will follow up with you, and can you please give us the best phone number? Is it this?
So I'll play for you the second example.
Hello? Hello?
Hi.
Hi, is this Zofa?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Taj. I'm with the Voter Integrity Fund. In the state of Arizona, it said that you requested the absentee ballot. I'm just making sure that you requested that ballot.
No, I did not request an absentee ballot.
Okay, somebody from our team will follow up with you. Is this a good number to follow back up with you on?
Yes.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, and you have a good day.
Okay.
Excuse me, Matt, before you go too much further, can you tell me what counties were those calls made to? Were they
The
all
only
Ma-
county
all
that's
Maricopa?
released data for us is Maricopa.
All right,
So-
thank you.
Sure. I'm going to proceed. So we, with some of the other experiments we ran, one of them was, again, no one's ever kind of tried to do this after an election before. Nobody's had the interest or the funds to do so. To really think about, if people were trying to cast illegal ballots, either it was part of an organized voter fraud effort or just somebody just deciding I'm going to cast a ballot I shouldn't, maybe a ballot that's not for my name, just one individual deciding, I got an absentee ballot request to this address, my address, this person doesn't live in here anymore, but maybe I should fill it out and see if I can cast it. or potential clerical errors. No one's ever really done this before, so we tried some stuff that just kind of that made us curious, things that we thought we might find things. So in Arizona, we actually pulled a universe of people who had never voted before, except they've showed up and voted this election, and just called them and say, hey, did you actually cast that ballot? It's very hard. Any of you who've, I'm sure in your maybe races for office, have operated phone centers or conducted public polling, when you start out with a universe that's pretty big, once you start trying to dial that and get responses, that universe shrinks a lot and shrinks very quickly, because you have a broad universe, and you have to try to pen phone numbers to it, and you get maybe half of them or so, and the people who the numbers are correct, or they don't go to voicemail, or some other problem, and people who actually pick up the phone and then start answering questions, that universe shrinks a lot. So we did this experiment in Arizona with some, again, voters who had never voted before, and asked them if they had cast that ballot. Now, about 1% of them told us that they didn't. But remember, those are people willing to talk to us and admit that they did not cast a ballot. And many of the people we reached, we had to leave voice messages for. We just couldn't get a hold of. But one person in particular, I want to play a video for you guys, who we left him a voicemail, but he never talked to us, so he's not included in these numbers. So I want to share just a clip, if I can, from a program. Let me adjust the volume here.
Maricopa County, Arizona, to Tennessee about 5 months ago so he could train for the Olympics. So you can imagine his surprise when he got a message from something called the Voter Integrity Fund.
The state of Arizona is reporting that a ballot was cast in the name of Nishan Garrett in the general election on Tuesday. If Nishan Garrett did not cast this ballot, please call us back.
Well, that doesn't sound fishy at all, right? Well, Nishan didn't think so either. So he went to the state of Arizona's voting website only to discover that his ballot had been accepted. And Maricopa County's voter portal said his ballot was signature verified and counted. The only problem is he'd already voted in Tennessee. He didn't vote in Arizona. Nishan Garrett joins me now. Nishan, great to see you. Now, you never received an Arizona absentee ballot or an application for mail-in ballot, so who the heck cast your ballot in Arizona?
That is an excellent question. That is an excellent question. I have no idea, and that's the reason why I'm on here with you tonight.
So I'm going to stop the video there.
About this?
But I think you get the drift of that. I'm actually going to play for you another recording here, which actually this one was particularly interesting to me.
Hi, my name is Thomas with the Voter Integrity Fund. May I please speak with Riley?
Yep, speaking to him.
All right, hi. Can you confirm whether or not you cast a ballot in the state of Arizona?
I'm a felon, so I can't vote.
All right. Let's see here. According to the state of Arizona, somebody cast a ballot in your name, and you may be a victim of voter fraud. Can you please give us the best number to reach you?
I mean, probably the one you're calling me at.
So I cut the video because, whenever we reach somebody like this, we want to ask them a couple questions. Is the best number to reach you at? Would you be willing to sign a declaration or something like that so we could pass that off to attorneys? I think those are two, and we've got hundreds of them of different categories. So we'll, as you've heard, we have recordings of everyone we spoke to, all of the 900 or so that didn't request, all of the 354 that said they did request but mailed it back, and somehow the state never got their vote. I want to talk about one of the other experiments we ran. We, at great expense, obtained a national voter file, and we used it to determine people who may have been registered here, moved to another state, registered to vote there, I believe invalidating their residency or inability to vote here, and then cast a ballot back here because we all have anecdotes, right? We've all heard crazy stories. I've had people, since this project has started, emailing me stories about suspicion, the sister-in-law or brother-in-law they don't like, they suspect they may have cast two ballots. They want me to look into it, and giving me their full addresses and dates of birth. Or I've also received, though, screenshots of social media profiles saying this person, they live in New York City. They've lived here a long time, but they figured their vote wouldn't really matter in New York City, but it would matter back in Arizona. So there's anecdotes, right? I don't think it's ever possible to maybe get enough of those anecdotes to have a meaningful number. But what we did is we took our national voter file and looked at registration dates there. And then we looked at the registration dates of people we matched it to in Arizona, where they moved from Arizona to California, for example, registered to vote there, and then decided they shopped their ballot, potentially, or they had the ballot cast in their name, and decided, you know what, my vote might count more in Arizona than it does in California, swing state. So we were able to identify these individuals who had a subsequent registration out of state but cast their early absentee here. Again, just Maricopa County and just early absentee, no election day. We also did an NCOA analysis. And when people move from one state to another, the Postal Service sort of tracks that. Often people fill out an NCOA card saying, I've moved here, please forward my mail. It's a pretty good indicator of the established residency somewhere else. And we found among this population a substantial number who NCOA to another state, but cast their ballot here. Now, I've kind of earned the reputation lately as kind of a data guy, but I work as a general consultant. I do all kinds of work around the country for candidates, everything from speeches to fundraising to designing literature. I've knocked on over 1,000 doors myself this cycle in states all over the country. And I can tell you that a lot of times, you know, people are, they move and they're very careful about where they can vote, where they can make potentially cast their vote, where they think if they have options, they make a choice, and sometimes they don't always make the right choice. So just in my experience of that, you know, it's not that uncommon. So people move, but they can still vote here. They get an absentee request forwarded to them, and they cast the ballot. They shouldn't. When we combine those numbers together for your state, and we merge, and we take out some that we estimate to have been military moves, which they don't actually lose their ability to vote in the state, we came up with a total of about 5,700 or so, just Maricopa, just early absentees. We also identified a population of double voters. Now, what's unique about this is that, again, we're not looking at people who maybe voted in person in California and voted by mail here. We're only able, because of limited data in many states, to compare early absentee voters to early absentee voters in other states. So if they voted early absentee in Arizona and voted early absentee, for example, in California, they'd show up here. But if and when we get access to Election Day voter lists, we'll be able to, these numbers will inevitably go up. And also, we've got a lot of limitations on our ability to match. One of those limitations is the availability of full and accurate dates of birth from states on their voter lists. In a lot of cases, states will suppress that. And that prevents us from being able to get a successful match on somebody who moved out of state with a subsequent registration. Because for us, for our project, we can't be the voter integrity project without integrity, and that requires a very tight match. So we're sure it's not just somebody with the same name, or even somebody with the same name, born in the same year, but it's got to be day, month, year exact as best we can. And we actually try to match on cell phones too when we're able to do that. So that kind of concludes the initial findings that I wanted to share with you about your state in particular. And I'd be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to ask this gentleman some questions?
You go ahead.
No? All right. Matt, I really appreciate you coming in. I know that you flew in, I think, late last night to make a short and succinct presentation. Can you tell me, relative to the work that you've done, with certainty, how many votes were cast that should not have been? Just a high-level number, because obviously, for example, the Trump campaign would like to see 10,457 votes overturned. But, not to be exact, but are we there based on the work that you've done? Because as we look at your work and the work of other people, we're starting to chip away at that number in a pretty serious way.
I would say there's two levels of confidence I have, okay? The first level of confidence is very. And I'm very confident that we get very close to that number when we take the residency issues and then apply it to the other counties for which we weren't able to obtain data. The second level of confidence is where you take a number of projection. We go back out to low activity analysis and NCO analysis, which I'm not going to get in the weeds, but these are basically people telling us that they had votes that they didn't cast votes that were cast in their name. If you're comfortable projecting these numbers to the population that we were trying to reach via phone that we just couldn't, I think then you reach another level of certainty that you're able to bridge that gap. So I think that I have a high degree of confidence that the number of ballots that were cast that should not have been cast, illegal ballots, surpasses the margin of victory as it stands right now.
Thank you very much. Representative Biasucci, you're the first to ask questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, second, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt, very much for your presentation. I just had a couple questions. For the 44% that you said did not request an early ballot but got one, how many people did you poll to get that 44%?
Well, we started off, as you can see in the chart, or maybe you can't see, with a large number of unreturned ballots in your state, in Maricopa. And then we reached out, we were able to get a phone match to maybe 250,000 of those. The number we were able to reach via phone is 2,044. The number who said they did not request that ballot was 902. Now, when your colleague asked me the question about how many, what's the margin of illegally cast ballots, I don't apply any of this, but this does raise a lot of questions. And that should a ballot be counted if somebody themselves not actually request it?
Right. That's a very good, and that's why I'm asking that question. Absolutely. And then the 1%, was it the same?
That
amount?
was this is among our shot in the dark, calling people on the phone to ask them, did you actually cast the ballot? Because their voting history suggested that they hadn't voted very often, if at all. So that's this universe that we decide to reach out to, and we pulled a data load in the state of in case of your state, of about 35,000.
The 1% of 35,000.
Right, but that universe could potentially be much larger. I just wanted to give our phone center an amount to sort of chew on. And the numbers, again, we saw the video of Mr. Garrett. We never spoke to him. He doesn't show up in these numbers. He just got the voice message. And I got to tell you the tremendous amount of courage for someone to do what he did, because when you become public, come forward in a situation like this, willing to say that you may have been a victim of voter fraud, you're all in the public spotlight, right? You're used to this. But if you're just some guy who seems to be the victim of voter fraud, all the things that have to go through your mind are, you're going to have a target in your back. You're going to have potential media trying to trash you, dox you.
Sure.
You have to talk to your wife about it first. What impact can it have on your occupation, on your family? So the willingness of him to actually go on television, I think there's got to be so many more people that just, not that they didn't have his courage, but just their life conditions would not allow them to come forward as publicly as he did.
Yeah, and I think, I don't care if it's one voter that this happened to. I mean, it's illegal. Right, and this is the problem, and the fact that even 1% of your 35,000, that should scare everybody. That's even happening. So I appreciate you getting the data. Thank you,
Senator Borelli. Representative Bartow, any questions?
Just real quickly, I was wondering, you mentioned Arizona has more anomalies than other states. Were we the only ones that had this kind of anomaly compared to other states with the unrequested absentees?
That actually is a universal problem to all 6 states, to some degree, but I don't think any had it quite to the same degree as you did. I'll just consult my chart, but that was my recollection. Yeah, it was far more substantial in Arizona. And looking at all these different states, they actually all have their own unique things that kind of make them stand out a little bit. And this is something that was unique to Arizona that made it sick. Because, in other states, they have serious problems in areas where you didn't have problems. But this was a problem that seemed to be more prominent here than we found it elsewhere.
Would you think that's a feature of, absentee balloting is very popular here in our state? I mean, we've had it for years and it's growing, and voter confidence in the system had been growing until really there was more information about the vulnerabilities that have been coming to light, and the questions about that. Do we compare? How do we compare with those other states?
Well, I think you have a stronger history of absentee ballot voting here than the other states do. But I think what's important is that, I've got a phone center. I've got data analysts. I can request things from different commercial vendors in your state, Secretary of State. I can do it. But what I can't do is round up a posse and go around and find out, well, who requested this ballot if this person didn't? How did that happen? I can't. It was done electronically. I can't track the IP addresses. I can't find the envelopes and that arrived in and dust it for fingerprint. That's something that's got to either be up to you guys or the law enforcement of your state or some other law enforcement agency. But getting the question in terms of who cast Nashon Garrett's ballot, how did that happen? Was it clerical error, maybe, or signature verified? It wasn't just cast; it was signature verified. Something went wrong here, and I don't have the power to find that out. I can just present it to you guys and to others who have similar authority. But I'd really like to know the answer to that question. I don't think I'm alone.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mayor Giuliani, you had a couple questions?
Yes, I do, sir. Just a few things that maybe I don't quite understand, but might be very helpful. The governor and the Secretary of State, I believe here today, certified the vote. It would seem to me that the one thing that you can be sure of, whether there are enough votes to overturn the election or not, or that the vote count is inaccurate, the one that presently exists. Is that right?
I believe that unless the questions that I raise get answered, you can't be confident of what the vote count actually is, and no one can.
But the present one is very questionable.
It is extremely questionable.
Not subject to a declaration under perjury that it's true and correct.
I
would you sign a declaration that it was true and correct in a statement to the federal government? I
absolutely would not. I would probably I would put myself at risk of going to prison.
And if I were your lawyer, I would tell you not to do it. Could you, based on your expertise, if in fact they hadn't been so hasty, or the legislature were to take the responsibility, could you conduct an audit in which you could come to a reasonable degree of certainty on how many illegal aliens voted?
It's good you asked that question. The federal government actually makes available a database of people, not necessarily who are citizens, but the opposite, people who are illegal aliens or green card holders, etc. And I actually have the document that a state would use to request that, to have that check done. And it's my intent, subsequent to this, because we've got other things flying around, but to pressure every state in the country to make this request of the federal government. And that request has to come from the Secretary of State's office. Now, what I don't know is, has the Secretary of State of this state ever made that request to bounce their voter list up against that to see who maybe is not qualified to cast a ballot? But that's an excellent question. That's what I think they should do.
Want to make a bet?
I'm not a gambling man.
Betting outside of the casinos here is illegal, sir.
Let's go across to Nevada, and we can do that. But seriously, with the number of illegal aliens in Arizona, in the millions, it's almost beyond doubt that some voted. And the margin is so small, 10 million. Wouldn't you be duty-bound to conduct that study before you certified a winner in this election?
I would agree, and it's so many things we can talk about that we shouldn't be happening at this hour. This is the kind of thing that the state should have done before Election Day, before a single ballot was cast. So remove the risk of contamination, and what's just as dangerous, I think, is the suspicion of contamination.
Right. Well, there's one study that was done that said 236,000 illegal aliens voted. I have no idea what their methodology was or how they produced it, but if you had time to do it, could that be done with a degree of certainty with regard to the number, even if it were an estimate?
Well, to figure out the precise number is difficult, but to hold your voter list against what this federal government will provide and match, you'd be able to subtract a substantial number of the illegal immigrants, or not just illegal immigrants casting ballots, but I think as probably as prominent, which may increase your numbers, are people who are green card holders,
non-citizens,
other visas that, where they are here legally, but
it's a bigger universe. Non-citizens.
It's a non-citizens who are permitted to vote. It's a much bigger universe, and I could certainly do that analysis, but I could not do it without the signature of the Secretary of State on that letter to the federal government requesting access to that database, because as you know, as many of these people know, it's very hard to figure out who actually is a citizen and who is not, or who's entitled to vote and who is not.
And how about the number of felons who voted that were not entitled to vote? That's been estimated at over 200,000 also. Would an audit of the voting list be able to assist in determining an approximate number?
The mechanics, the technical mechanics of an audit are easy. Getting the data of all the felons who would be ineligible, and not just complete data, not just that data, but you need to have full names, dates of birth at least, and then have the reciprocal data from the state, which they should have, and if they don't, that's a huge problem, because we've encountered many cases where the state on their voter list, they've got like a blank, or they'll mark somebody as the default, like born on January 1st, the year 1900 or something. So to be able to conduct that analysis is easy, but to get the resources of the data behind it to conduct it may be challenging, but the state has a better capability of doing it than anyone else, and if you want to retain me to do that, I'd be happy to send you an invoice.
And how about people from out of the state voting?
That's an analysis we did run, but again, our numbers on extremely low side, because we needed to have a high degree of confidence. The state itself could probably do a much better job of doing that analysis, and other states would be able to find more people who we couldn't discover having moved to other states based on real estate records, claiming the homestead tax exemption, which I think also established residency in another state, and just being able to do a much more vigorous match on voter lists, because again, we only got what the state gave us. We don't have what the state itself has.
There was a poll that was published that said that non-citizens broke 80-20 for Biden. How would someone do a poll like that?
You know, I would have to see what the sample size is.
At least they made an attempt to find out who are the non-citizens. It seems like the governor and the Secretary of State just don't want the facts.
I've actually worked for many pollsters. I actually used to work for Frank Luntz, and I think figuring out how to do a poll of non-citizens in an election they shouldn't be able to vote in that's got a very high degree of difficulty. But Biden's doing really well with that group. I don't know why.
But that sounds like a pretty sensible breakdown.
Yeah.
So, just to sum up, in addition to all the hundreds of thousands of ballots where Republicans were not allowed to observe while the Democrats dealt with them secretly, there are also the clear fact that non-citizens voted. The question is how many. There's the clear fact that felons not entitled to vote voted. We just don't know how many. And that people from outside of Arizona voted. We just don't know how many. And in each case, the governor and the Secretary of State put their names on the certification that the results were true and accurate, and never bothered to make a single effort to find out about these obvious areas that would change the numbers.
In a municipal election this same year, I was working for the candidate, and one of my responsibilities was as poll watcher. And when it came time to open up the